I pray.
Our favorite Temptation, Paul Williams, was born in Birmingham, Alabama on July 2nd, 1938 to Rufus and Sophia Williams. Paul's father, Rufus Williams, was a member of the gospel singing group, the Inslee Jubilee Singers from Birmingham, Alabama. Paul met Eddie Kendrick in elementary school when they were 8 years old. Their first encounter resulted in a fist fight after Paul poured dirty mop water on Eddie. Their friendship came about from their love of singing and music. They formed a singing group called the Cavaliers with friends Kel Osborne and Willie Waller as teenagers. They moved to Detroit in 1957 with manager Milton Jenkins and changed their names to the Primes. Milton Jenkins had this great idea to join 4 female singers to the Primes. Their names were Donna Ross, Mary Wilson, Florence Ballard, and Betty McGlone. The group was now called the Primes and the Primettes. The group performed and won numerous local talent contests against local rival groups such as Otis Williams and the Distance and more. Despite never recording any music, the Primes and the Primettes were very popular. After singer Kel Osborne moved to California to focus on his solo career, the Primes and the Primettes disbanded. Eddie moved back to Birmingham, Alabama, and Paul stayed in Detroit. Berry Gordy wanted to sign Paul as a solo act, but Paul declined the offer due to him being more comfortable in the group. He called Eddie and convinced Eddie to come back to Detroit. By 1961, Otis Williams was looking for 2 new members to join his group, The Distance. Eddie got wind of this and he called Otis up and asked Otis was he still looking for 2 new members to join his group. Otis was ecstatic. He was like, "Yes, man, I would love for you to join." Eddie said, "I will only join if you let my best friend Paul join as well." Otis was ecstatic. The movie version implies that Otis disliked Paul and Eddie, but that was far from the truth. In reality, he admired Paul and Eddie. He called them class acts, and he agreed to let Paul join. In March of 1961, The Distance, now including Paul, Eddie, Melvin, Al, and Otis, had an audition for Motown. Now calling themselves The Temptations, the new name came from songwriter Billy Mitchell and Paul Williams. They auditioned a song called "Oh Mother of Mine," written by Otis Williams. They were immediately signed by Motown.
Oh, mother of mine, I've been blind. The end, turn to the end. I've paid in gold.
Though now with a record deal, the Temptations' early years were unsuccessful. 3 years went by and they had many failed singles, earning them the nickname the Hit List Temptations. While Smokey Robinson wrote and produced many songs like "I Want the Love I Can See,"
I want a love I can see. That's the only kind that means a thing to me. Don't want a love you have to tell me about.
it didn't chart nationally, but it was a local success. The song have now been covered by several different artists over the past decades, including Jennifer Love Hewitt, Jackie Edwards, Creation Rebel, Don Penn, Biddy McLean, and Joe Holt. In the early years, Paul and Eddie would share the leads, with Al, Melvin, and Otis being in the background. Although they were unsuccessful in the early years, Berry still didn't give up on them. By 1963, Al had become more violent and unpredictable. By the summer of 1963, Paul and Al got into an altercation, where it resulted in Al smashing a beer bottle across Paul's face, which landed Paul in the hospital, nearly hitting the main artery, which could have killed him. Surprisingly, Paul forgave him and talked the group out of firing him, as he determined to give Al another chance. A second altercation happened at a Christmas party in 1963, which resulted in Al being fired. Exit Al, enter David. Berry Gordy's belief in the Temptations' success, Smokey Robinson's pen game, and the Temptations' prayers finally gave them a hit single in January of 1964 with the song "The Way You Do the Things You Do" with Eddie on lead. "The Way You Do the Things You Do" charted number 11 on Billboard Hot 100s and number 1 on Cashbox R&B charts.
You know you could not be perfect. Well, maybe you think that's a point or two, but I do the
December of 1964, the Temptations released My Girl, which became their first #1 hit single. David and Eddie now became the lead singers of the group, leaving Paul as an underrated vocalist in the shadows of the Temptations. However, in the fall of 1965, the Temptations released Don't Look Back, which Paul sung lead vocals on, and it reached number 14 on Billboard R&B singles.
There's no hiding. You can't run, you can't hide, you can't run. Your love has problems, I know, but they're problems. You just have to face. Oh, yeah. So if you just put your hand in mine, we're gonna leave all our troubles behind. Keep on walking, don't look back. Oh, yeah.
Paul suffered from sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia affects the shape of red blood cells, which carries oxygen to all parts of the body. The disease mainly affects people of African descent. Like many African Americans in those days, even many in these days, he had a strong distrust for the American Medical Society. He decided to self-medicate with alcohol. Paul's health had slowly deteriorated over time, and by the time he was 29, he needed an oxygen tank before and after every performance. You can see in some performances where he was in so much pain he can barely move.
Screaming down the unlighted street, want your mama.
The drinking and the pain became noticeable and unbearable. Paul was pushed from the front right side of the lineup to the back right side of the lineup.
Just sit on that.
By the early 70s, Paul had fallen into a Great Depression. His health was declining. Once the lead choreographer for the Temptations, he was now pushed to the back as Charlie Atkins had now become the lead choreographer. His days of singing lead was now long gone. He was only given minor snippets of songs. He also protested against Motown for many of the songs that they released, as Paul felt they weren't black enough. Paul's saying was always, "Black radio made us, black people made us. I don't want to be a sellout."
The falling leaves drip by my window.
Paul's voice and stage performance had become ravaged because of the drinking and illness he suffered from. The Temptations agreed to have Richard fill in for Paul backstage while Paul Mike was off in front stage. Not only was Paul suffering from health and group problems, Paul also owed $80,000 in back taxes, which is equivalent to $629,807 in today's society. A man who was only drinking milk was now drinking 3/5 of Cavassier a day. But was this enough to make him commit suicide? Paul, by doctor's orders, quit the Temptations. Eddie Kendrick, who originally wanted to leave the group in 1965, left a few months later in the year of 1971 because he refused to be in the group without his best friend by his side. Eddie and David had successful short-lived solo careers, but Paul couldn't get Motown to get him off the shelves. He was very vocal about Barry, Motown, the contracts, and how Barry was paying them an allowance of $800 a week, even though the Temptations had sold millions of records. Paul had accused Motown 1 year before his death of trying to kill his soul. He stated that since he left the Temptations, he had been unemployed. He also stated that Motown lied to publications stating that he had cancer. He rebutted, "Do I look sick?" Eddie Kendrick, who had known Paul nearly all his life, tried to help as much as possible. He tried to get Paul record deals. He tried to write songs for Paul. He even invited Paul on stage with him during performances.
He came through my window. I watched as she passes by. Give it to me. I say to myself, oh, Paul, you such a lucky guy. Yes, you are. To have a girl like her.
A week before Paul's death, Eddie, David, and the Temptations guitar player Cornelius Grant was robbed outside of Cornelius Grant's home. A few days before Paul's death, Eddie Kendrick's car was stolen. Now, this all can be a coincidence, but this reminds me of a few years back when Otis and Eddie nearly died in a car accident. This also reminds me in the 80s when David Ruffin was telling people that Motown was trying to kill him. The thing that makes Paul's death interesting is that it was easier to say he committed suicide even though there was lack of evidence. The case seemed to be a very hush-hush closed kind of case. Because according to Eddie, who had saw Paul the day before, and his estranged wife, who had spoken to him the morning of, Paul was in good spirits and Paul had not been drinking for months. On August the 17th, 1973, at the age of 34, Paul Williams was found dead in an alley with a bullet in his head, a broken liquor bottle next to him, and he was only wearing his underwear. Instantly, his death was ruled a suicide. However, most of Detroit knew the truth or rumored the truth. Why not stage a suicide? Paul was known to battle depression. Paul was known to battle alcoholism. Paul was known to be suffering from sickle cell anemia and cirrhosis of the liver. He also owed $80,000 in back taxes. So a person who's battling mental illness, those are good enough reasons, or are they? Well, according to the coroner's report, Paul had used his right hand to shoot himself on the left side of his head. In addition, a bottle of alcohol was found near Williams' left side as if he had dropped it while being shot or as if it was intentionally placed there. The gun used in the shooting was found to have fired 2 shots with 2 bullet casings next to Paul's lifeless body. Only 1 bullet had killed Paul. Paul also had no gunpowder residue on him. So, if Paul Williams was murdered, who killed Paul? Paul and his wife Mary were separated around this time. Paul had a couple mistresses, including the supreme singer Florence Ballard, cousin Winnie Brown. Winnie and Paul had opened up this celebrity boutique which sold clothing. However, it was unsuccessful, which resulted in Paul owing $80,000 in back taxes. I'm not for sure if it was Winnie who was with Paul on August the 17th, but it was rumored that Paul was at a mistress' house and her husband came home to find Paul there. The husband chased Paul outside of the home with only his underwear, and when he caught up with Paul, he killed him. It was also rumored that it was the Motown Mafia who unalived Paul because the $80,000 he owed in back taxes, he actually owed them as well for financing his Celebrity House West, which was him and his mistress boutique that they owned in Detroit. After Paul's death, Eddie and David became very suspicious of Motown. Even close to the end of David's life, like I stated earlier, David was paranoid that Motown was trying to kill him, according to Tony Turner. Now, Eddie said to a Philadelphia magazine that Paul was in great health. He was back to normal. He said he seen Paul in every way possible, and it didn't make sense for Paul to kill himself. In the last months of Paul's life, he was sober. He was even back working. Eddie Kendrick said that Paul had gotten a band together. He had done some recording, and he had been talking contracts with several record companies. He was even back the Temptations choreographer. Even though he was no longer in the group, he was scheduled to help them with dance routines for their Vegas shows in October of 1973. Eddie Kendricks, who was very hurt and confused by Paul's death, stated, "I've seen Paul every way imaginable. Drunk, ecstatic, furious, down and out. Every time he dropped, I will be there to help him back up. He would have done it for me. His comeback was my fight. I thought I was winning until they called me." He also said, "I'll never really understand how he could have done that. The Paul I saw last week was the one I grew up with in Alabama. I thought sure he was back to his old self, but I guess in the end, I really didn't know him." His mother, Miss Sophia Williams, said, "My boy was lacking 2 grades to finish high school, but he wouldn't do it. He grew up singing songs with Eddie on the porch and in church. They had music deep inside, and they had to find a way to get it out to the world. I never blamed them for that, but I never thought it'd come to this." Paul seemed in great spirits the day of, the day before, the months leading to his death, but we know mental illness can be tricky. But a couple things about his death is that a few months leading up to his death, Paul was back dancing, Paul was back singing, 2 of the things he loved most besides his family.
You're the sun that shines when clouds are in the way. You're the light of love to brighten each and every day. You care, oh, when no one cares at all. And you are there when I need you. All I have to do is call. And I need you more now than ever.
Now, from hearing Paul's solo songs and hearing him on stage with Eddie, the way Otis and Motown made it seem like his voice was gone because of the drinking, because of the illness, I don't hear it. He sounds the same as he does in those early Temptation records. I want to know what you all think. Do you guys think Paul committed suicide? Because mental illness do not have an expiration date. However, if he did commit suicide, why was he basically butt naked in an alley 2 blocks from Motown? Why was there no gunpowder found on him? Why was there 2 bullets? And why did he decide, okay, I'm going to kill myself, but I'm going to shoot myself with my left hand when I am right-handed?
We've introduced ourselves to you musically, and now we would like to introduce ourselves to you personally. I'm Paul Williams. If it's love that you're running from, there's no hiding place.
You can't run, you can't hide, you can't run, you can't
Love has problems, I know, but they're problems we'll just have to face. Oh yeah. If you just put your hand in mine, we're gonna leave all our troubles behind. Keep on walking, don't look back.
Don't look back,
And don't look back.
don't look
Oh yeah. And don't look back, baby.
Don't look